So when you think of open ear headphones, the first thing that may come to mind are bone conduction headphones, and they've been seriously great at providing a way to listen to all your music or your podcasts while still being aware of your surroundings. But there are some compromises to bone conduction, mainly when it comes to sound quality, where with that kind of technology, there's only a certain amount of bass and low end that they can put out since they aren't using traditional speakers, and instead are vibrating against your cheekbone to transmit sound. So that's where with some companies that have actually been known for bone conduction have come out with air conduction headphones, and air conduction is basically fancy marketing lingo for speakers. That's what speakers do, is transmit sound by moving air. But fancy marketing speak aside, air conduction does offer some advantages over bone conduction, especially when it comes to sound quality. So these are the new OWS Sport headphones from Oladance, and Oladance has been making air conduction headphones for a bit that have been getting a pretty good reception. So what they did is take basically everything from their OWS Pro headphones, which are truly wireless, and put them into a more sports-specific wraparound design with increased water and sweat protection. And of course the question is, how well do they really work for sports, and do they sound good? So first off, let's talk about why you may want an open ear headphone, and it basically comes down to being aware of your surroundings, and this could be for many reasons. So for sports, this is especially useful. So for like running, this allows you to listen to your music or your podcasts while still being able to hear stuff like traffic or other pedestrians. And then for trail running, it's going to be really good so you can hear other trail users and possibly any fun forest animals. And then for cycling, well, that's going to be really important where you need to be aware when it comes to cars. The transparency mode on traditional earbuds is getting to be pretty good, but it's still nowhere near as good as having your ears completely open. Plus, the transparency mode on most earbuds don't do well when it comes to handling wind. Transparency mode is using the microphones on the outside of the earbuds to pipe in outside sound, and well, that outside sound is wind, so it can sometimes sound like a hurricane inside your head when there's a lot of wind. And basically that's where open ear headphones come into play, like bone conduction or air conduction. So let's go ahead and get straight into probably one of the main things that you may want to know, sound quality. And these are simply very good compared to other open ear headphones. And in general, air conduction headphones, you can basically expect much better sound quality than what you can get out of bone conduction, but not quite as good sound quality as in-ear headphones. And with these, the sound is quite rich and they have a very broad range with crisp highs and a decent low end. For nearly all kinds of music, these do really well, but for those really deep lows that you may get from techno or some hip hop, they won't be as punchy as what you can get out of an in-ear headphone, but that's just kind of hard to do without being completely closed off and in your ear canals. But they still provide a very full experience, and music feels really expansive where there's kind of like a 3D effect, which is much different than bone conduction, where bone conduction can sound flat at times. The only area where bone conduction may actually sound better are going to be with vocals, and I'm talking about just barely better, but these are just nice and balanced overall. These also have a customizable equalizer where you can change the sound signature, where they have two presets where you can increase the low end with a surging bass profile as well as enhancing voices. The surging bass profile, well, it definitely increases the bass, but I wouldn't necessarily call it surging either. And I also found it to muddle things just a little bit, but the pure voice definitely enhances the voices. And what I actually did to get the sound profile that I liked is used a customizable equalizer where I just cranked up the lows as much as they could go, as well as the highs, and I quite liked it at that point. So when comparing the sound quality to the Shox Open Fits, which are probably going to be the closest competitor, the Open Fits provide a bit more on the low end, but these provide a broader range where these may sound more full overall. And I went back and forth on these, and these are both good, and overall they're very close. You may prefer one over the other, but it's certainly not a night and day difference either. They're both really good. Now, one concern when it comes to air conduction headphones is sound leakage, where since these are speakers that are open to the air, they could potentially transmit sound outwards. And while I'm not shy about the fact that I sometimes listen to Miley Cyrus, some people may not want to hear that. And these don't transmit much sound, if at all, outwards. And they're able to do this by directing sound into the ear rather than outwards. And then when it comes to battery life, so these are rated at 15 hours, and I think they actually may exceed that claim. So I've been listening to these over the last 4 days very consistently, and I still have plenty of battery life left. They charge via a magnetic USB-C cable, but interestingly, they're still using USB Type-A, which is kind of weird to see nowadays. They also come with a carrying case with this nice soft felt-like material on the outside, but the case doesn't necessarily provide any charging or anything like that, which would have been kind of cool to see, but it's a nice case. And then for the controls, on the right side, they have buttons to turn it on and adjust the volume, and on the left-hand side, there's a multi-function button that can be used to play, pods, skip tracks, or enable a voice assistant. And then for calls, you can answer and reject, and you can customize these controls in the app. And these are physical buttons versus touch-sensitive buttons, and for the most part, that's what I tend to prefer when it comes to headphones, especially when it comes to sports scenarios, where it's just easier to find the button and click them. Plus, sweat can be a little bit tricky when it comes to touch-sensitive buttons. And then using the buttons is also good where you can pinch the bottom of the earbud to use the button, so you're not pushing the earpiece into your ear to press the button. The button placement is just slightly strange for me though, where for some reason it just feels a little bit out of place to be on the speaker portion of the headphones next to your ear. I sort of like controls that are a little bit more behind the ear on this style of wraparound headphones, but these aren't necessarily hard to use by any means either. And then when it comes to comfort and security stuff, these are super comfortable. And like I was mentioning earlier, I've been wearing these a ton over the last few days. And I think on one day I wore them for like 5 to 6 hours straight. Now, one thing to keep in mind though with any over-the-ear headphone is that after a few hours, you may experience a little bit of ear fatigue. So it's not necessarily something that's exclusive to these necessarily, but just over-the-ear headphones in general. These are a little bit heavier than the Shox Open Run Pros as well as the Shock Open Fits. So if you are sensitive to ear fatigue, you may experience that a little bit sooner with these other than some other options. But these may be more comfortable than bone conduction headphones for some people since they don't necessarily sit on the cheekbones. And if you have tried bone conduction headphones before, you may have noticed that the vibration can sort of tickle your skin. So if you don't like that sort of feeling, you may actually prefer these. And then for security, this style of wraparound over-the-ear headphone are going to be some of the most secure that you can get. And these should be great for any kind of activity, whether that's running, biking, high-intensity interval training, basically whatever. Now with this style of headphone though, we should probably also talk about compatibility with sunglasses, hats, as well as helmets. So when it comes to hats, you really shouldn't have an issue here unless you're wearing a hat that maybe like goes over your ears. So those should be fine. And then same thing goes for sunglasses where you really shouldn't have an issue here. So your sunglasses should just like sit right on top of the little over the ear piece. And then when it comes to helmets, so this is actually a mountain bike helmet, which tends to come down a bit more in the back than most helmets. So go ahead and put this on right here, snap that into place. So there's plenty of room for the retention system right here. So really no issues at all. Now, where you probably won't be able to use these are going to be stuff like snow helmets or full face helmets, where with these kinds of headphones, the force on the side of your head from the helmet will push the earpieces into your head, which isn't so comfortable. Oh, and then one thing I think I forgot to mention before is that since these are sport-focused headphones, these have an IPX8 water-resistant rating. So these are going to be super resilient for water and sweat, where you could submerge these for up to 30 minutes underwater at 1.5 meters deep. But do note that these aren't necessarily designed for swimming since they don't have any onboard storage. And then when it comes to handling wind noise, so these do a really good job for an open ear design. Of course, since they are an open ear design, you'll obviously still hear wind, but the sound that they put out seems to be getting piped into your ears fairly well to overcome the wind noise. And I also think that the earpieces themselves may have something to do with blocking wind, which may help. And when compared to bone conduction, I do find these to be better merely because of the fact that they're putting out a more fuller sound.
And then for call quality, this is what the microphone sounds like on the Oladance OWS Sports inside in a pretty quiet room. And then this is what the microphone sounds like on the Oladance OWS Sports outside. There's really not much wind, but I'm just kind of walking around.
So ultimately, these OWS Sport headphones, I think they're going to be a great option when it comes to sport-focused open-ear headphones. They deliver great sound, plenty of security, and really good battery life. Now, compared to probably one of the closest competitors out there, the Shox Open Fits, the Open Fits probably edge them out when it comes to sound, especially on the low end, but I think these have a broader range. But where the OWS Sports are going to be better is going to be for sports, where these are simply going to be more secure. The Open Fits probably will be more comfortable, but with the Open Fits, I do worry about these coming off with certain types of jarring activities. Compared to bone conduction though, so the Open Run Pros from Shox as well as the Suunto Wings are the best sounding bone conduction headphones I've ever tried, but they still don't hold a candle to air conduction, and I'm talking about both the OWS Sport as well as the Shox Open Fits. The only thing I'd say that would be an advantage though with bone conduction is that there's an earplug trick where you can actually have a noise cancellation feature, I guess you could say, where you can literally wear earplugs with these and still hear your music just due to the technology where it's using vibrations against your cheekbones to transmit sound versus air. I think there's probably a place still for bone conduction as well as air conduction, but if you use bone conduction and have always wanted a richer, fuller sound, these fit the bill. And if you wanted something more secure than the Shox Open Fits or Oladance's own OWS Pros, these should be right up your alley as well. Anyhow, if you have any questions about the OWS sports that I didn't cover in the video, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section down below. And if you found the information in this video useful, do me a favor and also hit that like button, and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more sports tech videos just like this that are coming soon. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.